Okay, now we are starting Chelek Beis, Chidush HaOilam. Before we begin, I'd like to point out that we already were introduced to this section way back in Chelek Aleph Perek Beis, at the end of the beginning of the first section of Perek Beis in Chelek Aleph, when Rapinkus talks about how Shabbos is where there's a Gili Shechina, how Kodesh Baruch Hu comes into the world on Shabbos. So he already referenced over here, Lahalam b'chelik sheni nivar be'ez Hashem heichan be'emes munach be'inyan HaShabbos Gilui Malchus Shemayim. In the next section, Chelik Sheni, about Chidush HaOilam, he's going to tell us about where do we see Gilui Malchus Shemayim in Shabbos. Why is it Dafka on Shabbos that we see the Gilui Malchus Shemayim? So that's really what we're going to be starting over here, Chelek Beis. The first whole section we spoke about Malchus, the concept of Malchus, how HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes into the world, raises the world, even beyond what would be naturally possible. And the greatest thing is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is here, even more than he lifts up the whole world. Now in the second, in Chelek Sheni, we're going to be learning, how does that happen? How does it happen that Hashem comes into the world? What exactly is happening? What do we see on Shabbos? What do we experience on Shabbos that brings out this Gilui Shechina? So the first section is about the Gilui Shechina, and the second section now of Chidush HaOilam is about how we bring out the Gilui Shechina. How is that seen on Shabbos? And because of that, we're going to be talking a lot about Emunah, and how Shabbos is very, very connected to Emunah. Then we know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the Borei Umanhig, the first of the Yud Gimel Ikarim. The Rambam lists, Shehu Borei Umanhig, he is the creator and he is the guider of the whole world. This we can see on Shabbos. And how does this happen? So the first section over here, Chidush HaOilam, Perek Aleph, which is about the idea of Chidush HaOilam, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the world was created from nothing, is where we're going to begin to see where the Gilui Shechina is. So most of this first section is going to be a lot about Emunah, and very much of the yesodus of what we as Shomer Torah Mitzvahs, Jews, the nation of Hashem, what we believe and what we know to be true. So we're now starting Perek Aleph and the Chelek Beis, Chidush HaOilam. Nivar Achshav, says Rapinkus, now we will start to explain Be'ezrat Hashem, Heicha Nimsa B'Metzius HaShabbos Gilui Malchus Shemayim. Where do we find that Gilui Malchus Shemayim? We said Hashem comes in. It's Hashem's day. Where do we see it on Shabbos? Lama Yevi Shabbos Hashar Bo Nichnas L'Kedushas Hashem Yisbarach. Why is Shabbos that gateway that brings in the Rebbeinu Shel Olam? He goes on in the next paragraph to ask that there's Shvitas Shabbos. We rest on Shabbos. That is how we show Zeicher L'Maisa Bereishis, by doing nothing, by doing all the malachos that you're not supposed to do to create. The Lamatem malachos are all learned from the Mishkan. The Mishkan was like a creation of a new world, a world where there was a Gilui Shechina, where HaKadosh Baruch Hu came into the world. The Medrash tells us that originally when HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, he was here in the world together with us. He was walking in Gan Eden. And then, unfortunately, there are numerous generations of sin, beginning with Adam HaRishon, and continuing on, generation after generation, 7 times. And every time HaKadosh Baruch Hu went a little bit further away, and a little bit further away, until he was in the 7th Rekiah, whatever that means. 7 levels above the world. He wasn't found in this world, and slowly Avram Avinu and Yitzchak and Yaakov and the Shvatim, slowly HaKadosh Baruch Hu came closer and closer into our world, till finally, when Klal Yisrael created the Mishkan, the Shechina actually came back to dwell in this world. And that, we already discussed, that's also what happens on Shabbos. Shabbos is Hashem is here in the world. So the creation that was done in the Mishkan was a way of bringing Hashem into the world. And that's why we have a Zeichel Amaisa Bereshis. We are remembering Hashem created the world. Hashem brought himself into the world, the Shekhinah into the world. So you might think, maybe what we should do on Shabbos is create. Because that shows that Hashem created the world. But it's just the opposite. We don't create. We hold back from doing any form of creation. The Lamatet Melachos are 39 forms of creation. You can ask each one, how is Hotzah? How are different ways of creation? We don't have to go through it right now. But the 39 Melachos are creative activity. And we stop from all creative activity on Shabbos. What does Shabbos represent? So here in the bottom paragraph on Daf Mem Gimel. Hinei HaYisoid B'Sukyon Hu Shabbos Eino Bo Lo Ois Al Yitziras O Oilim B'Maisa Bereshis. Shabbos is not a sign of the creation of the world of Maisa Bereshis. Elo Lo Ois Al Chidush HaOilam. The hitchatshus of the oilam me'ha'ayin va'efes ha'gamur. Shabbos represents that the world was created from nothing, from absolutely nothing. Shabbos is coming to show us this point, that the world was created from nothing. There was no matter. There was no physical material at all. In fact, before any of creation, there was no spiritual either. There was only one thing. There were no malachim. There was nothing. Malachim had to be created as well. The whole ruchnius world had to be created as well. Before the creation of the world, there was nothingness. Which is why human beings can't understand what that means, complete nothingness. Even what the Pasuk says, v'choshech al panei tahoim, that means there was a tahoim and there was a choshech. Even that there wasn't. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the choshech. Like we say, Yotzer Or Barei Choshech. Hashem created choshech. Choshech is not just the absence of anything. Choshech is a metzius. It was created. Hashem created choshech. Before that, there was nothingness. We can't understand as human beings what that means, which is why the Mishnah in Chagiga says we're not even supposed to be thinking about these things, because the human mind won't be able to understand it. We are not given that ability to understand what complete nothingness means. Because of that, a person can come to kvira or to go crazy if they think about ideas that the human brain cannot understand. It's not possible to understand. But what we do know, and this is where the major point is, we do know that Hashem was the only thing. It was all Metzias was only Hashem. He didn't create anything. There was nothing created before Hashem did all the creation. There was nothing else here. There was no physical matter. There was no spiritual matter. The only thing there was is Hashem. So when we're talking about Shabbos, we're talking about a remembrance of the creation of everything from nothing. Ayin Ramban, Parshas Yisro, Parshas Veschanon, B'dibur Shel Shabbos, V'achinuch, Mitzvah Lamed Beis. Why is it so important to talk about this, to remember that Hashem created the whole world from nothing? So we're here on the top of Mem Daled Va'inyan. The Hayisoid HaGodesh Alav Oimed HaKol Hu Yisoid Yichud Hashem. This is the basis of all emunah. All emunah is that we know of Yichud Hashem. That Hashem is one, the true one, and the only one. Ubiuro HaKadmoinim, the Kadmoinim is a reference to the Rishonim, and maybe even the Go'enim before, who wrote about this from a philosophical perspective to try to understand, like the Rambam, to understand one of the Ikarim of Emunah. So they explain, She'inyan Yichud HaMiyuchas Alav Yisbarach Eino Rak Ke'echad HaMisapri. He's not just one like the number one. That's not just that. She'Hashem Yisbarach Hu Borei Echad Ve'ein Oid Achar Kamoyu. It's not just that He is the Creator and there is no one else besides that. That's true, but it's more than that. Ela ha'echad moya ha'achdus gemura. It's a complete oneness. Yochid u'miyuchad ve'ein on milvado. He is one, he is singular, and there is nothing else besides him. Hainu she'ein oid b'mitzius shum mitzius kayomos chutz mimenu yisbarach. There is no other existence besides for Hashem. Even what after he created, you have to understand that a little bit better, but essentially everything that exists is only from Hashem. What does it mean Hashem is one? We say that, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. We say it twice a day, 3 times a day. Kriya Shema Lamita. Say it 3 times a day. What does it mean that Hashem is one? So what he's bringing out is that Hashem is one, is that if you look at the number 1 can be divided, 1 can be 2 halves. Anything can be divided. Anything that there is in existence can be divided. You have what the scientists thought many years ago was the smallest particle called an atom, and they discovered it's not true. You can cut an atom into pieces. There's so many pieces in an atom, and even those pieces can be cut into pieces, and even those pieces can be cut into pieces. So everything can be divided in the world until infinity. There is no complete oneness in creation, because everything in creation can be divided. The only thing that is truly one is Hashem. Hashem cannot be divided. Maybe we can talk about different midos of Hashem, how Hashem relates to the world, and we can learn from those midos how we should act, and we can talk about how Hashem interacts with us, and about the Shechina, which is Kiviyachol, a way that Hashem brings himself into this world. What do you mean? Hashem is everything. Hashem's already in the world. Hashem is the world. When we say makom, hamokom yenachim eschem, what are we talking about? It's a kinui for Hashem. It's a name for Hashem. Hamokom yenachim. What does it mean? Hamokom yenachim eschem. Hamokom is a reference to Hashem. Why do we call him hamokom? Because the place is everything. We only exist within Hashem. Hashem is everything and everywhere. And he is completely one. There's something called the Shechina. What's the Shechina? Shechina comes from the word shachan, to rest. That's the way Hashem wants to show I'm together with you, where we can feel it more real. We can see it, we can feel it. That's the way. It doesn't mean that that's a different part. It's not a different part, chas v'sholom. It's the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to relate to us, like different midos that Hashem uses to relate to man. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the ultimate oneness, whether it's not divisible and it's everything. This is the first and main yesod of all of Yiddishkeit. Unlike other religions in the world that have a shituf, that they have different parts to it, like Christianity, which has different parts to it. I don't want to discuss Islam because, first of all, I don't know enough about Islam. But to say that Islam believes in the same thing as we do is very difficult to say, because their religion believes in murder and destruction, and their Quran is a total warp of everything that happened in history. So we're not going to talk about them. But Lamaisa, we know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is completely one, and there was nothing in existence at all, only Hashem, before he created the world. V'yesod gadol zeh, I'm in the second paragraph now. V'yesod gadol zeh shel hayichud hu poyel yoytze miyesod chidush ha'olam. The two things work together, that Hashem is complete one, and that Hashem created everything from nothingness. V'hu, the kevan to kol hanivroim nivro al yodo, since everything was created from his hand, al yodo yisbarach, me'ayin ve'efes gamor, from absolute nothingness, nimsa she'ein l'shum davar chutz mimenu mitzius mitzad atzmo. It comes out there is no existence besides for him. We are all just coming out from him, from his ratzon. Everything that there exists on this planet or anywhere else in the universe is only because Hashem created us. We are coming from him. Everything is coming from him. It's only coming from the desire that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to be here. Shezeu muhuso shall kol hamitzius be'emes. That is the essence of all existence. Bitui shall ritzono yizbarach. A realization of the Ratzon Hashem. Im kain nimtza shebe'emes ein zulaso. Must be that there is nothing else. Everything that there is only stems from His Ratzon. He is the source of everything. V'ninasa devar ektatz, I think, and we'll go try to explain this a little bit more. Hinei klal pashut hu. Shehageder amiti shel mitzius kol davar hu shorsho mikoro. There's a simple idea that when we want to understand what the essence of something is, we look at its roots. Where did it come from? Lidugma. He brings an example over here of a tree that's made out of neft, made out of oil. Right? Nowadays you can make anything out of oil. You have things like rayon and polyester and all of these different types of materials that are not natural materials. They're all made out of oils. So you dress, it looks like you're wearing a nice wool suit, but it's not wool. It's basically plastic. That's what it is. You're wearing a plastic suit. Now, it doesn't look like it's plastic because they know how to make it with the strands, and it looks... But somebody who is a little bit sensitive can feel when you're wearing a wool suit and when you're wearing a polyester suit. You can feel the difference. You know that it's not the same thing. From the outside, it might look very similar, but it's not. So he says, you can make a tree out of oil. It looks like it's a regular tree. Somebody who really understands can see. You can see that it's really made out of oil. The ways of testing it out to see. If you burn it, what will happen if you burn it? You'll see what happens. It'll turn right back to what it was. It's brought down in Hilchos Mikvos, this din, where it says, the Gemara here, he quotes in Zvachim, if there are certain types of bugs that are in the mikvah, they can be mitzvah for the shear of a mikvah. Why? Because they're created from the water. Even though they're not water, and this is a living creature in front of you, because its creation is through the water. Just as an interesting side point, there are halachic shilas with regards to this din. If somebody needs to be toivel in a mikvah and they can't get their hair wet for whatever reason, and it's maybe even medically dangerous to get their hair wet, there are shilas that are asked, can you have a covering, a head covering that's not considered to be a chatzitza because it's made out of fish skin? It's made out of something like this that he's talking about, that it's bria from the water, and if it's bria from the water, it has a din like water. If it has a din like water, then it's not a chatzitza. Very interesting. L'maisa, that's what you see, that whatever it comes from, so that's what it is. Im kain, ima oilam kulo nase me'ein ve'efes. If the whole world is created from absolute nothingness, hari mitziuso amiti hu rak ein ve'efes. That means its shoirish is nothing. Im kain mahu. What is it then? You have something in front of us, we have a table in front of us, we have chairs in front of us, it's not nothing. What is it? Everything that is here in this world came about because Hashem wanted it to be here through His words when He created the world with His 10 Ma'amoros. Shal yodam ba kol liklal mitzius. Everything came into existence through these 10 mamoros. Nimtza shebe mitziusam hamitit. What is its true essence? What is its shoyresh? Ritzoyin yizbarach umamoro. It's the desire for Hashem for it to be here, and for His command that it should be here through His mimer, through Him saying, "Vayihi or like He's saying that there should be created or. There was or. That is the true root of everything. There is nothing in the world except for the Ratzon Hashem. Everything that is here is the Ratzon Hashem and His mimer and what He says. Hadabar Ramuz Nifla B'dabar B'divrei Chazal. This is referred to. This is hinted to in the words of Chazal and Medrash Tehillim. Ein lanu ela ha'aretz panecha. We only have one thing: the light, the shining light of your face. Perish. What does that mean? Sha'aretz panav yizbarach machma shu hashoyresh v'amakor l'chol davar. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the root of everything that exists. Hi hametzius hayechida shenimtzes v'chutz miritzono ein klum. He is the source, the root of everything. Hashem's word is what keeps everything. Rashi comments in the next paragraph. He brings the idea of the rakia. On the second day of creation, Hashem created the rakia. What's the rakia? The rakia is the separation between the waters above and the waters below. The waters below, we know what they are. The oceans, the rivers, the streams, everything. In fact, at that point, there was only water. There was no land. The land was hidden underneath the water. And what's the waters above? The waters above is the Shamayim. That's why it's called Sham Mayim. There is water there. Or Eshmayim, as Rashi refers there in Parshas Bereshis. That it's a mixture of fire and water is the Shamayim. So there's the water above and the water below. What's keeping them separate? The Rakia. In English they call it the firmament. What is that? What it is Hashem saying, stay there. Don't move. Stay exactly where you are. That's it. That's all there needs to be. Hashem says, I don't go. I don't move anywhere. It's Hashem's Ratzon. Hashem wants to be there. That's where it is. That's its essence. That's what it means. Hashem made the Rekia. Just His words. That's it. Nimseinu l'meidim. I'm in the second paragraph on the Mem Hey. Nimseinu l'meidim. What comes out, Yisoid, Shekol emunas Yisrael benuya alav hu Yisoid chidush ha'olam. What comes out is the Yisoid of all the emunah of Kal Yisrael is built on the idea that the whole world is created from nothingness. It's only the Ratzon Hashem. It's not just that Hashem created it, but the creations came about because of His desire, His will, His words. That's where all of existence came from. Many, many times the Rishonim bring this up. She'emuna b'metzias Hashem below yisoid achidush eino nikras emuna klal. If you believe in Hashem, but you don't believe in the yisoid of emuna, then you're not really believing it. The yisoid of chidush, the yisoid of creation, then you're not really believing in Hashem. Because really believing in Hashem means that Hashem is everything. And anything else that there is only coming from His Ratzon. It only comes from Him. Va'amnam hasibut l'kach ein darti. The reasons for this is two. Kipshuta, first of all. Shim haya oilam kadmon arei nimtzis oid metzius kayemes v'kodemes b'shituv chas v'shalom. Because if there would be another thing, meaning even if the world was on its own, there wouldn't be another God, so to speak, but the world was on its own, then we couldn't be able to say that Hashem is the only existence. There would be another existence. To say such a thing goes against the Ikra Emunah. Everything had to come from Hashem. If there was, as we'll see in the next section, which I don't think we're going to get to today, but in the next section, it goes through the philosophy of the ancient Greeks and how they looked at the world, that the world was always here. There was no such thing as yesh me'ayin. There was no such thing. The truth of the matter is, from a scientific perspective, this has come out impossible to understand. It doesn't make any, because we know there are elements in the world. You can't break things down. Even there are basic elements. You can't turn something into nothing. If you squash it, even if you burn it, all of its pieces go into different places. It can never be totally destroyed. It is here. It's just now in different pieces. That's why they have such a hard time understanding. Where did everything come from? And they'll say, everything was already here. We'll discuss this Be'ez Hashem next week, what the Greek philosophy of this, and the difference, how we can understand the differences and what really is our the ikarim of our emunah. But as we just said, Hashem is the source and the first of everything. Who Rishon, and He was always here, and there was nothing else besides for Him. That's number one. And number two, Gam Kefi Amizbaer should be Yisoid Achidish Toli Kol Inyan Yichud Amiti. Like we explained that the Chiddush, we'll explain more, that the idea of Chiddush Ha'olam shows that Hashem is truly one. Kevan Sha'akol is Chadish Chiddush Gomor Nimsa She'ein Oid Shum Metzius Amitis Chutz Meyichudo Yisbarach. The fact that He is one shows that there was no other creation. There was nothing else. So these two pieces come together. We are totally, in total understanding. We can't understand what that Mitzias was. But the Ikra Emunah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is the ultimate oneness. And He created all of existence. Certainly existence as we know it, but even the spiritual existence Hashem created. There was nothing else. This is the main yesod of all of creation, all of Yiddishkeit. When we have this down, so we're gonna be stopping now, but we're gonna be talking in the next section what exactly is the difference between this and Greek philosophy, like we mentioned before, and then how do we see this in Shabbos? How do we see these aspects in Shabbos that we can bring them out from Shabbos and experience in Shabbos what it means that Hashem created the whole world? So Be'ez Hashem, in the coming weeks we will be discussing this more.